1, 2. 1, 2. All right. Maybe I should make sure my son's okay. Boy, he looked puny. Fever was only 99, though. That's really not that bad, right? Yeah. Abby got almost 104. Of course, she got extra booster. Did I tell you that story? The needle jumped out of the syringe and it was like hanging in her arm, and a bunch of the vaccine was running down her arm. So then the guy was like, yeah. And so she got a second dose. That was weird. Yeah, we've jokingly said she's like a Marvel character now. I don't know. Thankfully, she was. Well, good morning, friends. Welcome to Rise Worship. Today is Sunday, January the 9th, 2022. My name is Amanda, and I am thrilled that you are joining us from wherever you are in the world. We want to kick off this first live service by reminding you that you are a gift. Your life has meaning. Your life has purpose. We are so thankful for you and so thankful that you are joining us. Please remember, this world needs your giftedness. You are a gift. Go and be a gift to and for someone today. We begin every Rise worship experience with a welcoming statement. This statement reminds us of who and whose we are, and in a sense, why we exist. So I invite you to read along with me wherever you may be as I read the welcoming statement. Rise believes that God has open arms, and so should we. Our Creator wants us to love, accept, and affirm every human being, including persons of every age, race, ethnic background, nationality, gender identity, sexual orientation, family or socioeconomic status, educational background, and physical or mental ability. We celebrate our diversity and recognize the sacred worth and dignity of all. Everyone is invited and encouraged to join us as we seek to follow Jesus with mutual respect, understanding, and love. Feels good to read that on this first official 2022 worship gathering. Moving on to just a couple of NOMO FOMO announcements. NOMO FOMO stands for no more fear of missing out, because we do not want you to miss out on a thing. Do want to let you know we're going to remain live but virtual for a few more weeks until Omicron chills out. We don't want to offer a specific date when we will gather in person again, because who knows, but we want these numbers to drop a little before we gather again at Pale Fire. We will keep you posted. In the meantime, join us here live, here meaning there, live on Sunday mornings at exactly 10ish, and or watch us later, whatever floats your canoe. We also want to encourage you to check social media for all of the things. We work hard to keep that up to date. I'm not a big social media person. I understand if you're not, but if you could just sort of peek occasionally so you're up to date as to what Rise is up to. Another way you can get information from us if you don't want to check social media is to give us your digits. That's right, we're fancy and we're texting people. I promise you, we are not going to blow up your phone with texts. We try to be discerning about how many we send. We need you to send us, again, your digits for texting, and Marty is going to put how to do that in the chat. Very, very important. And then finally, we are still selling art. This is a beautiful canvas that has captured our beautiful mural from 60 West Market Street. And you can go into the Snow Good holiday art store. I guess it's now the Snow Good winter art store, and purchase a canvas. You can purchase a print. You can purchase note cards, and a chunk of what you spend will support Rise in all of our efforts and ministries. So I get it, right? You were distracted during the holiday season, but you need to treat yourself and buy yourself some beautiful Rise-related art. We want to know what you need. There are probably many things you need. You may need a listening ear. You may need ice cream. You may need someone to come and shovel snow. I don't know. We would like to be a part of helping to meet those needs. So a magical box should pop up, and we encourage you to enter your specific needs, or if you're aware of someone else who may have a need that we can help to address, put that in the box as well. I do want to let you know that everything shared in the What Do You Need box is held in confidence. Our prayer time today comes to you from the amazing Amy Halaski Martin, who is in Boulder, Colorado. We are beginning a series throughout the last about 8 weeks, focusing on resilience. You're going to hear a lot more about that in a few minutes. But Amy's prayer today the prayer time includes a powerful story and a prayer. Amy knows a lot about what it means to be and create resilience. So I'm excited for us all to lean in and learn from her. Amy, take it away.
Good morning, y'all. Amy Martin here from the top of a mountain with my boy Cash, taking him on a walk this morning. I've been asked to talk about resilience, and so I looked up the definition, and the first definition was the ability to recover from something quickly. And then the second one was springing back after being bent, compressed, and something else. And I thought, that's resilience to me, because resilience isn't about me necessarily recovering quickly, right? Or bouncing it off or rolling it off my back. But resilience feels like bending to being almost broken or broken. Being compressed to where you lost who you were, being stretched so thin. Resilience is like when you have to muster up what you didn't even know was there. And I feel like we've all done a lot of that. I think Rise in particular is a community that knows a lot about resilience, fortunately and unfortunately. And I think that's a little bit of what I want to talk about is that prior to this year, resilience to me was what I went through, what I've overcome. And then the problem is that I not only acknowledged that and moved through it, but I attached it to me. I thought that when I went through something and made it through something astronomical, whatever it be, that it was then my duty to say, see, look what I've gone through. Now this is a part of who I am. My resilience, my experience, my hardship is attached to my identity. And so, I wasn't just, who was Amy? You know what I mean? And that was part of the question when I moved to Colorado. Who am I, if not the things that I've overcome? If not the things that I've worked through? If not the things that almost broke me? If not the things that happened to me? And so here I am at like 28, going to Colorado, starting over the first time, and I'm like, all right, who am I if I'm not this like lesbian in this struggling, like with internalized homophobia, fighting the good fight of this small town? Or who am I if I am not the daughter of the folks that are dying, that I'm nursing back to health? Who am I if I'm not the kid that grew up in the rough home? Who am I if I'm not the person that overcame, their dependencies? And I found that I was carrying all of that resilience, all of those things that I had quote unquote overcome, as a badge, and attaching that to my identity, to where I got here and I didn't have anything left to pick up. I was tired, I was full, my arms were full, I didn't know how to put any of that down, to figure out, I couldn't pick up anything new, I couldn't become anything else, I didn't know who I was, and I didn't know how to become anything new, because look, my arms are already full of this lifetime of resilience. And then I started doing work that helped me realize that maybe resilience isn't about what we have overcome and then attaching that resilience and carrying that. Maybe resilience is a gift, rather than this like superpower that I just have to like pull myself up from my bootstraps over and over again just because, and like line me up to punch me in the face, like that's not what resilience is to me anymore. Resilience is when given a situation that I feel like that is bending me, is breaking me, is stretching me, is compressing me, is whatever, whether it be big, like starting over, going through a divorce, anything, or small, like, oh, I'm gonna say yes to this opportunity that makes me really nervous, that is scary. Like, that's resilience. And I guess what I'm saying is I'm learning that in those moments when I choose to go through hardship and make it through the other side, instead of saying, okay, that's mine to carry now, say, I went through that as to not straddle both the old and the new. I went through that to prepare myself for the opportunities to come. Example, real quick. Athletes that are come from like nothing and then get signed like overnight. Well, they hadn't done the work to get there. And sometimes it works out, but sometimes you see these folks, they get thrown into the limelight and they don't know what to do with it. And that's an easy example, but it's something that I stick with, to say they hadn't done the work. They hadn't built the resilience to prepare themselves for the opportunity. They are still holding that old shit. They're still that old version of themselves. And so what does it look like if I take these opportunities and not saying, oh my God, look at this, is what happened to me one more time, that I have to do this, poor me, poor me, poor me, but instead say, all right, what am I learning here? Because what I've gone through this summer and, into this new year, and with the uncertainty and the starting over and all of the opportunity as well, I could not receive that. I couldn't make this album with Chance even a year ago. I couldn't have, Many Nights Ahead was offered to go on tour many years ago with Avett Brothers before, and it fell through. And I thought that was a huge loss of opportunity. Could you imagine 19-year-old Amy on tour full time with, No. I was unrecovered. I was a mess. I would have burned my life to the ground. And so resilience isn't easy. It's not easy to unpack. It's not easy to feel good about. It's not easy to wrestle with. But I guess I want to say is that we are all resilient. And I'm learning that resilience doesn't mean that it's something that I get to carry now. Resilience is that I went through something to prepare me for the opportunity that's coming. So I can be my better self, my best self, my realized self, my most true self. And without resilience, I don't know that I could ever find that answer. Without the hardship, without going through those things, without bending and almost breaking, I would never realize this other side. So with that, I'll stop talking because Amanda's supposed to preach. And I'll close in prayer. God, thank you for resilience. Thank you for the opportunity that waits on the other side of hardship. Thank you for the community that I get to travel across the country from and still journey with. Thank you for the transformation that happens in resilience. Thank you for the strength that it takes to be resilient. And as we move through this new year of more hard, difficult things and uncertainty and opportunity and the best and the worst of times, let us remember that this isn't just something else that's happening that we have to trudge through and then wear like a scarlet letter, but that it's something that we are going to trudge through, meaning walking with a purpose together and knowing that on the other side of that is our more realized self closer to you. And it's healing. Resilience is healing. What happens when you shake things up? A revolution. And resilience to me is that revolution. Thank you, Lord. Be with us. Help us remember our resilience when we cannot. Help us remind each other of our own resilience when we cannot. In your name, amen.
Thank you so much, Amy. That was incredibly powerful, and we are forever grateful for you. I want to remind you about our offering. We finished December in a very strong place. I don't have the exact numbers, but I know there's a lot to feel good about. As we head into 2022, we have some big dreams. I know it may seem like things are a little slow right now, but I guarantee you some exciting things are going to emerge in this year. We need your financial support to undergird those efforts and to enable all that Rise is and can become to thrive. So please remember, you can give to Rise using Venmo. We still joyfully accept cash, check. We are getting really creative, actually, with the ways we receive people's gifts. So talk to us. If there's some way you'd like to give to Rise, we would like to have that conversation with you. But please remember, we need your ongoing support to be all we can be. Our first song today is a beautiful hymn, one of my favorites. It's called "It Is Well With My Soul." And I'd encourage you to go research the history behind this hymn. Essentially, the man who wrote this hymn wrote it after losing 4 of his children at sea. And when you understand the indescribable grief he was experiencing, the pain he was experiencing, and then you read these words, this is absolutely a hymn rooted in resilience. So Audrey Shoup is going to offer her incredible gifts and sing "It Is Well With My Soul." And wherever you are, whenever you're watching this, I'd encourage you to sing along. Audrey, take it away.
When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrow
Thank you so much, Audrey. It's always incredible to hear your voice. Hey, I've been joined by two fabulous humans, Nancy
Hello.
and Abby.
Hello.
And they're going to help us engage in theological exploration. Many of you know how this works, but just in case you don't, we're going to ask some questions here, and we encourage you to respond in the chat. In particular, talk to each other in the chat. We have a firm belief here, and that is everyone is a theologian, and everyone has remarkable insight to offer. Particularly about this series, I think everyone has a remarkable amount of insight to offer. So please use the chat, share what's on your mind, what's on your heart. Abby will do her best. Nope, today it's Nancy. I'm so used to Abby doing
She's
I
like,
will not be doing my best.
She will do her worst.
I'll be doing Abby's best.
Yes, Nancy will be doing Abby's best to pull some of your comments from the chat. And you've heard us say this many times before, but please be gentle with Nancy. It is hard sometimes to keep up with the chat. She'll do her best. This is why we say talk amongst yourselves, because that's really, really important. Abby is here to share her amazing wisdom and insight, and I'm here to keep us moving along. All right. So this is obviously the intro week for the series, Rooted in Resilience. I love that alliteration. So let's begin by defining this term, this idea of resilience. And so I did a tiny bit of background checking. What does resilience mean? And I like this definition. It says the capacity to recover from difficult life events. Abby, when you think of this idea of resilience in all of its richness and complexity, what images come to mind? Or maybe there are sounds that come to mind, but yeah, particularly images.
So with imagery, I was really excited for this question. The first thing that comes to mind with me is the mustard seed. I was raised in a secular family. We weren't really churchgoers, but one thing that my family really loved was the story of the mustard seed. But they always looked at it from a more secular perspective.
Interesting.
So it was to the point that I didn't even know that that was a religious story until my college years.
That's so cool.
We'll talk about that later, how that came up. Yeah.
Yes, but the way that we were always taught about it was no matter how small you feel and no matter how much you get kicked around or pushed down, you are like the mustard seed. You can grow into this big, large, huge thing. So sorry. Thank you, Andy. So what I was saying was it reminds me of the mustard seed in that we can all feel small, we can all feel pushed around and little, but we also still have the ability to grow into this huge thing, to be resilient, to grow bigger than however small we may have felt.
That is amazing. I love that. So there's an image. Nancy, when
Yes.
you hear the word resilient or resilience, what comes to mind?
Well, I have this tattoo here, actually. I don't know if everybody can see it on there, but it's a symbol called a unalome. It's a Buddhist symbol. And basically, it's got like a spiral and some swirls and kind of back and forth and a bunch of dots. And basically, the symbol is supposed to represent like all the little things that happen in your life and how things happen that make you change, you know, and kind of grow. And then with the lotus flower, that's just a symbol of literally resilience and growth. And, you know, the lotus flower grows in an area that such a beautiful thing shouldn't maybe grow. But that is definitely a big symbol for me of resilience. Just, you know, taking in the dots and changing as they come.
Amen. And is the chat offering imagery or thoughts?
There actually is something that just popped up. I often think of trees when it comes to resilience. Like I'm from the middle of nowhere, and trees get the crap knocked out of them all the time. Like they bend and lose branches and whatnot, but they still stand.
Our beautiful logo for this series is that of a tree being blown in the wind. And I think it's striking and stunning. And yes, absolutely. Trees are in so many ways an incredible image of resilience. I've told this story before, but I have a vivid memory of years ago, I think 2004. My husband and I went to Yellowstone National Park, and they'd just experienced, probably about a year before, fires. And we were driving through this part of the park that just looked charred, right? Like there could not possibly be any life anywhere, kind of charred. And we pulled over for some reason, and I got out and looked at the ground, and underneath soot and not exactly the most lifelike looking ground cover were these little green shoots sticking up through the ash. And I will forever carry that image with me. Sometimes, in fact, quite often in life, we have to assume a posture where we're really looking closely at what is emerging from the ash. But life persevered and perseveres in that space and in many spaces. And that's incredibly hopeful. Anything else?
Yeah, there are 3 really good comments in the chat here that I wanted to share. One was similar to your story. Someone visited Mount St. Helens. And just the rebirth of the landscape, after the eruption. Weeds are incredibly resilient because they grow everywhere, no matter how hard you try. And then someone mentioned the Beatles song Blackbird, citing the lyrics, "Take these broken wings and learn to fly."
Oh,
which I think is a fantastic song of resilience. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to mention this at the end, but I'll go ahead and mention it now. We want to create a resilience playlist. This is part of the plan for this series. So if a song comes to mind that really speaks to you about resilience, please put it in the chat. We're going to try to create this by the time Ash Wednesday /Lent come our way. So yeah, Blackbirds going on there. Somebody out there, capture that. All right. Moving on. Question. Are we born with resilience? Right? Are some people just naturally born with it? Maybe she's born with it. Or that is an old commercial.
Maybe it's Maybelline.
Yeah,
had to.
Thank you.
No
You had to finish it. But seriously, I've found myself wondering, as I've been pondering this topic quite a bit over the last few days, are some people just more naturally resilient or not? Can you build resilience, sort of like you build a muscle? Abby, what are your thoughts?
So that was one that this is a question that I was sitting with a lot last night. And I have to go with, I don't think people are born naturally resilient. I think that this is something that people develop over time. I do, however, think that it's one of those things that it's easier to develop in your youth, because similar to a muscle, right? If you continue to use it, if you continue to lean into it, it'll get stronger. Whereas if you're an adult or older, it may be harder to begin developing that muscle because you have created such a routine where it's not needed that now it feels unnecessary or foreign to try to build resilience. But I do think that it's something that every single person is capable of, and whether you are the most privileged person in the world or from the lowest of the lowest, most impoverished, everyone will have to experience resilience at some point. It's just a matter of when you're 2 or 202.
I love that. I'm sitting here thinking of families that have experienced, every family has experienced pain, loss, and challenge, but I'm thinking of some families that have experienced pain, loss, and challenge, and I'm thinking of the ways that different people in those families respond. And I have no easy answers for this. I am positive sociologists and psychologists have studied this. But I wonder why it is that in certain family systems, some people seem more resilient. Any thoughts, Nancy or Abby?
The general consensus so far in the chat is that we do learn resilience. I'm sitting here thinking like I think we're all born with the capacity like anything else. But I think it takes a lot of like being open to be resilient and not like shut off. If that makes sense, like you have to be open to different possibilities, change, in order to get past whatever you're hurdling in your resilience. People say it's a combination, nature and nurture. Here's a comment. I was about to say that there is natural resilience, but like Abby's thoughts, so people grew up in families of origin that make it easier to develop resilience than others. I think that... Where'd it go? Oh, people who have a strong community have been recognized as being resilient, can bounce back to a new, different, quote unquote, better position spiritually and physically. So I think, having a community, being open to other people joining you in your change in life and your whatever you're overcoming.
Abby, any thoughts?
Yeah, that question, particularly about family systems, really resonates within my personal story. And that's still a question that even I don't know the answer to. My story is very complex and kind of too long for this little theological exploration. But it is marked with a lot of drug abuse and financial hardships. And that is a question that I wrestle with a lot, is out of being the youngest of 9, how is it that I was the only one that was so lucky so as to not turn to drugs? Or how was I the only one that was so lucky to get out of being impoverished? Because to just say resiliency, I don't think is quite fair, because we were all handed the same cards in my family. And we all experienced the same situations. So it's a hard question to answer. But that is one that very much resonates deeply with me.
Thank you. I'm going to move us along. There was one other question here that we may come back to, but I want to make sure we have time for the scriptures. So I have heard from many of you, and Abby, I know, has shared that some people have said this to you, and that is that many of you want to wrestle with Bible stories a little more. You want to do a deep dive into some scriptures. So that's part of our plan for this series, is to spend serious time unpacking some scriptures. We try to always do that, but we're going to try to lean into that a little bit more because we're aware we do have limited time. So throughout this series, we're going to examine stories from Scripture and particularly explore how they can help us understand this complex idea, resilience. So today we're going to look at the story of Jesus's baptism. The lectionary is a 3-year cycle. If you follow the lectionary, if you're part of a faith community that follows the lectionary, there are appointed readings for every Sunday. And by the time you finish a 3-year lectionary cycle, you have read about, I believe it's like 88% of the Bible. Sometimes we align with the appointed lectionary readings for whatever Sunday. Sometimes we don't. Today we are going to. This is what is called Baptism of the Lord Sunday, which typically follows the Sunday when we hear the story of the visitation of the Magi. That's sort of a loose description. But anyway, this is Baptism of the Lord Sunday. From the Gospel of Luke, we're hearing Luke's account of Jesus's baptism because we are in lectionary year C. So, Abby, if you would offer this or read this story, let me set it up. So we're entering into the story when John the Baptist is doing his John the Baptist thing, and it's important to know that he has just really said some things about some very powerful people, Herod being one of them. And I was jokingly saying before worship today that it's sort of like John went on Twitter and called out some really unethical behavior of pretty powerful leaders, and they did not appreciate that. I believe they clapped back. Is that what I would say?
The word, yes.
Yes. And it didn't go well for him. As often happens when we are a threat to powerful people, his head ended up on a platter a little bit later in the story. But that's sort of where we are. He's been provoking people. He's been saying some pretty bold things. And he is baptizing, right, lines of people. And he is saying to various groups of people who are assembled there, hey, you need to stop your unethical behavior. You need to stop harming people. And so that's where we're picking up here. So Abby, take it away.
Absolutely. So the crowds asked him, John the Baptist, what then should we do? He answered, whoever has 2 shirts must share with the one who has none, and whoever has food must do the same. Even tax collectors came to be baptized. They said to him, Teacher, what should we do? He replied, collect no more than you are authorized to collect. Soldiers asked, what about us? What should we do? He answered, don't cheat or harass anyone and be satisfied with your pay. The people were filled with expectation, and everyone wondered whether John might be the Christ. John replied to them all, I baptize you with water, but the one who is more powerful than me is coming. I'm not worthy to loosen the straps of his sandals. He will baptize you with the Holy Spirit and fire. The shovel he uses to sift the wheat from the husks is in his hands. He will clean out his threshing area and bring the wheat into his barn. But he will burn the husks with a fire that cannot be put out. With many other words, John appealed to them, proclaiming good news to the people. But Herod the ruler had been criticized harshly by John because of Herodias, Herod's brother's wife, and because of all the evil he had done. He added this to the list of evil deeds. He locked John up in prison. When everyone was being baptized, Jesus also was baptized. While he was praying, heaven was opened and the Holy Spirit came down on him in bodily form like a dove. And there was a voice from heaven, You are my son, whom I dearly love. In you I find happiness.
Thank you. So there's a lot there, and I would like to explore perhaps some of the themes we hear in this story, particularly where do you hear resilience? I was also saying before worship today that this particular translation from the Common English Bible makes me chuckle because, very often when this scene is depicted, there's like the James Earl Jones voice and God says, you are my son in whom I'm well pleased. And in this translation, God's like, you make me happy. I just love it. I find happiness in you. So anyway, Abby, where do you hear resilience in here?
So immediately off the bat, I feel like one of the more obvious pieces is John, because he gets locked up. And that in and of itself is a story of resilience because, I wasn't John the Baptist. I don't know. But he had to have an inkling that telling all of these people these things was gonna result in some sort of negative backlash.
Indeed it did.
Yeah.
Yes.
And him knowingly and willingly still going and doing these things is a story of resilience, is that he knew he would get thrown in prison. He knew much worse was going to come. But he did it anyway. And that, to me, really sparks resilience.
Yes, this is the epitome of speaking truth to power.
Yes.
And you're absolutely right. One must be incredibly resilient if one is going to speak truth to power, like John the Baptist. What else? Nancy, initial thoughts. Where's the resilience in this story?
Well, I mean, I think even just, I mean, like Abby said, like knowing that you're speaking out so loudly against what was commonly held, like to tell a tax collector to stop cheating people, that's pretty bold. It's pretty bold. But with that, like he knew there was, he spoke of what was coming. And so he knew that there was a better thing coming. So it didn't matter.
Yes. And so I'm focusing now on the end of the story, which is, it's interesting, the very last part of the story where God's like, you make me happy. I dearly love you. This is the part that we typically hear. We included a little more of the story because I do think it's interesting, John's role in this and how people respond to John in various ways. Because, Herod had his literal head on a platter, or actually it was Herodias who wanted that. But others listened to him. Right? You hear this sort of sense of awakening within people who are doing significant harm to others. There's this, now we don't know if it lasted or not, but there's this sense that there's awakening to what a transformed life could look like. And there's some rich stuff there about resilience too. But at the end, there's the whole Jesus part, where he's baptized. And I think there's a really powerful message here about identity and knowing who and whose we are. When I think about the most resilient people I've known in my life's journey thus far, almost every single one has this deep sense of who and whose they are and their belovedness. And that core understanding of who and whose they are, that core understanding of their belovedness has enabled them to live lives of remarkable resilience. And so, the next part of this story is Jesus leaves and enters the wilderness and endures some significant challenges for sure. And I always think it's interesting that prior to wandering in the wilderness, prior to being tempted and all that story entails, he was reminded of who he was. So there's quite a lesson here, I think, about resilience and identity. Abby, any thoughts about that?
I think you really hit the nail on the head remarkably well about how, sorry, I'm trying to collect my thoughts.
Nope,
I'm very
that's
much
fine.
used to being the second talker. That's okay. I do think that, resilience in part is developed when there is such a strong sense of identity, both rooted in who you are, but also when you are spiritual, whose you are. And I think that really helps to develop it. One piece of this resiliency that I wanted to pull back in was one thing that we were talking about was how in the beginning part of the story, when John the Baptist is calling all of these people to, if you have more than enough, get rid of it, share it. If you have 2 shirts, give one to a friend. If you're a tax collector, don't take more than you're supposed to, so on and so forth. That is the beginning stages of resiliency. These people are coming from more than enough. They're so used to having more than enough. Now they are leaning into this sort of spirituality side of it, this theological side of it. And to an extent, that does need resiliency. When you are so used to living up here, having to live down here for your community, as we are called to do, is a learning curve. And that requires great resiliency and great strength to be willing to do that.
Amen. Amen. Nancy, anything there about belovedness, identity, a transformed life? There's a lot here.
I wanted to mention a comment about the resilience in the people that came to listen to John and came to John in their search for something different. And that was a good comment in the chat there.
Okay.
And then basically, like, it's saying like it's a different kind of resilience when you don't know when the hard times are going to end, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yes. So we're going to bring it home here in a couple minutes, but I am curious about this idea of identity and this deep core sense of who and whose we are. I wonder, I think it is significant that Jesus, even Jesus, needed that.
Mm-hmm.
This was, in many ways, the sort of the beginning of the rest of his life as a very public figure.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is so easy to deify Jesus, right? That we forget his 100% human side, right? Jesus, 100% God, 100% human, 200% Jesus. But in his humanness, he needed that powerful, powerful reminder of his belovedness, of his goodness. And so I'm curious, friends who are joining us right now, who has reminded you of your belovedness? Who in your story has helped shape an identity that has resulted in your resiliency? Abby, has there been anyone in your life's journey who has reminded you of who and whose you are?
Yes. And so, again, raised in kind of a secular family, but any chance that I get, I will always talk about my mom. She put me up for adoption when I was 10 because she got really sick with cancer. But her resiliency in that, in being willing to identify, take a step back, and reach out to her sister who lived on the other side of the country, really showcases to me what resiliency is. That even in the hardest of times, she was still putting others first and still putting her community first. And in the same vein, my parents are an excellent example of resiliency. So they actually tried to adopt me for the first time in 2000. But as two women who were married, not technically married at the time, they were told no. They said that there needed to be a man in the household to raise me. I was 2 years old at the time, so I was still very young. And they were said, no, you cannot because there's a man in the household, or there's no man in the household. Well, then fast forward 8 years, and my mom calls them up and says, hey, are you still interested in adopting Abby? And without even discussing it, they said yes. And that too is resiliency, that even though they were turned away years and years ago, they still said absolutely, without a doubt.
What a beautiful story. Thank you. A story of belovedness, a story, an incredible story of what it means to be
and so
resilient.
Even though it was a secular family, this is very much non-religious. It does remind me how much I am loved and how I am beloved, that all of these community would come together just for me is a phenomenal feeling.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Nancy, what's going on over there?
There's a really good comment in the chat I want to share here. It says, it's almost like resilience is connected to confidence in some ways. Confidence is how we are created to be. Confidence is who God is, etc. I thought that was a really good little statement there. As for a story of resilience that I see, I mean, for me, I know I was born very premature and spent a lot of time in the hospital as a young child. And it wasn't until I was in my mid-30s that I found out that, like, you know, I grew up without family, so I'd met my aunts later in life, and found out that, like, my aunts and my grandmother, like, came and visited me every day for the first, like, 6 months. that I was like in the hospital and in an incubator and such. So that was just a nice thing to learn. That obviously I had no idea and would never remember, but I think they're telling the truth.
Isn't that interesting that at age 2, at age under
0.
6 months, right, age 0, this sense of love, this sense of a community saying, you are beloved, you make me happy, this changed you. There's something mystical, there's something sacred about that. And I think it's really cool that we're starting this series today, that this is Baptism of the Lord Sunday, because I would say, this is totally just Amanda's opinion, but I would say that at the core of resilience is a sense of belovedness, a sense of the fact that you are a gift. There's a reason we say that all the time. And it is because we need to be reminded of that. We need to be reminded of our belovedness, of our giftedness. It is, again, the foundation of a life of resilience. And so here we've heard 2 powerful stories from a very young age, whether you were aware of it or not, love came to you and began shaping a spirit of resilience within both of you. Friends, we're going to bring it home here. Are there any last comments in the chat?
At the core of resilience is a sense of belovedness. That's now a quote that's floating around the internet, just so you know.
You can put it on a t-shirt.
You know, you had mentioned before when we were kind of chatting this out before we started about how it felt like resilience was sometimes like the focus on the greater good kind of thing. And I kind of see that woven in every single story that we told here, you know. Yeah. So it's almost like recognizing it in yourself helps you recognize it in those around you.
Well, yeah, I find it comical, but like when John is interacting with all these people, right? And they're like, but what should we do? But I'm not living a great life. What should I do? And he's like, well, stop being greedy, stop hoarding things, stop cheating people, right? Duh. But it's this fascinating moment in the story where people are illustrating that they have the capacity to change. And that is, I mean, elasticity, if you will, ethical elasticity is also part of resilience. And I think when we understand that we do have the capacity to change, we do have the capacity to live into our belovedness, that's hope. I need that to get out of bed in the morning, the belief that I have the capacity to change and live into my full God-given potential. Maybe that's not the best word, but into my belovedness. I have to believe that is the case for all of us. The story's not over, right? Yeah. And I think that's what John was saying is, well, then change, right? And it's not that simple. And I love how the instructions, he offers such simple direction, right? He doesn't offer a 10-step plan for transformation. He says, give one of your shirts away to someone who needs it. It's pretty simple, but perhaps that has something profound to say about what transformation looks like. It happens one small step at a time. All right. There is a lot in this story. I encourage you to continue thinking about it and to continue pondering your own belovedness and what your belief in, your understanding of your own belovedness has to do with living a resilient life. Want to intro our final song here, and that is Arise, favorite.
It's one of our hymns.
It is. It's one of our hymns. We've said it many times, but the patron saint of Rise is Lady Gaga. And this particular song that you're about to hear, goodness, we've heard it a lot through the years, but it in many ways speaks to your belovedness, our belovedness. And it reminds us of who and whose we are. I would argue it's even a bit of a baptismal song. So, wherever you are, sing out. Remember that you were created in the image of God, that God delights in you, and that you make God happy. Here it is, Born This Way, performed by Amy.
My mama told me when I was young, we were all born superstars. She rolled my hair, put my lipstick on, in the glass of her boudoir. There's nothing wrong with loving who you are, she said, 'cause he made you perfect, babe. So
All right. Well, speaking of resilience, technology has really helped me develop that resilience muscle over the past, what feels like 5 million years. We have learned to have a sense of humor, and we have learned to adapt. Actually, this entire pandemic journey has been one long lesson in resilience. So, I mean, the series is pretty timely. We're not sure what happened there, but that's okay. Remember, well, maybe at the end we can try and sing it. What do you think?
Sure.
It won't be sung well, but
We'll try to get it to you later today.
Can we get the Audreys up here?
Yeah. Nope. All right. So moving on, I want to one more time plug our offering, Venmo, Cash, check. Thank you for all of the ways you support this beautiful, resilient movement we call Rise. And we are resilient as a community. Mm-hmm. We really are. I think if you were asking me to sum up Rise in 5 words, resilient would definitely be one of those words.
At least 4 of them. Oh.
It would be all 5. Okay, we're going to head to our final blessing. We spent a long time trying to land on the right blessing for today. And this is one that hung in my house as I was growing up. Nancy is also familiar with it. And it is a beautiful piece. And I hope you'll lean in and listen, because to me, it describes a life and a posture in life that is one that leads to resilience. So, Nancy, take it away.
Indeed. Go placidly amid the noise and the haste, and remember that peace there may be in silence. As far as possible without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others. Even the dull and the ignorant, they too have a story. Avoid loud and aggressive persons. They are vexations to the spirit. If you compare yourself with others, you may become vain and bitter, for always there will be greater and lesser persons than yourself. Enjoy your achievements as well as your plans. Keep interested in your own career. However humble, it is a real possession in the changing fortunes of time. Exercise caution in your business affairs, for the world is full of trickery. But let this not blind you to what virtue there is. Many persons strive for high ideals, and everywhere life is full of heroism. Be yourself. Period. Especially do not feign affection, neither be cynical about love, for in the face of all ardity and in disenchantment, it is as perennial as the grass. Take kindly to the counsel of the years, gracefully surrendering the things of youth. Nurture strengths of the spirit to shield you in sudden misfortune. But do not distress yourself with dark imaginings. Many fears are born of fatigue and loneliness. Beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. You are a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars, and you have a right to be here. Whether or not it is clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should. Therefore, be at peace with God, whatever you conceive him to be, and whatever your labors and aspirations, in the noisy confusion of life, keep peace with your soul. With all its sham, drudgery, and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. Be cheerful. Strive to be happy. Max Ehrmann.
Written in 1927.
Wow.
And, some of the language, you can hear 1927 in it, but it's so timely, so much of it. I love this. With all its sham, drudgery, and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. Friends, remember your belovedness. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you virtually next Sunday at exactly 10ish when we will continue to explore this theme of resilience. Have a beautiful day, and we'll try to get Born This Way to you a little bit later.
Bye.